Ladies and gentlemen,
They say the next big thing is here.
The Steve Warneke Show.
Hi, everybody. Welcome to the Steve Warneke Show. Thanks for being with me. I am Steve Warneke, all things at stevewarneke.com. Okay. Nothing I've ever done has changed my life more than the 15 years I spent as a cop. Nothing. It is a change that is forever. I can't ever go back, for good or for bad, and I think it's for good. I was talking to a retired friend just the other day, and he said, he's been out of the job like 2 years, and he said to me, the longer I'm away from the job of police officer, the more I realized all the ways it ruined me. Context-wise, it wasn't a negative thing. It was supposed to be funny, but it's true. It's true. And did you know, from the research that I'm currently doing right now at stevewarneke.com, 50% of police officers say they do not feel that they can talk to loved ones about what they're doing at work, about the stresses of the job, about what they're feeling at work. I think, through my 15 years in law enforcement, that there were some changes that occurred in me, and I noticed changes, not in everybody, but I noticed changes in police officers. And so I wrote about law enforcement distress syndrome, which is defined as a psychological condition developed by some law enforcement officers due to prolonged periods of being under threat, due to prolonged exposure to threat, violence, trauma, accidents, and crime. It's the hidden cost police officers are paying. I mean, we all know the sacrifice they make every day, but this is the hidden cost, and I don't even think a lot of cops know this. And I've personally observed some of the 8 symptoms that I've identified in LEDS, law enforcement distress syndrome, in myself. I've noticed some of these symptoms. And I've noticed other symptoms in other police officers. Some of them to extreme degrees. And if you're on the job, if you're a cop, if you're in law enforcement, think about some of these as we talk about them. I guarantee you know somebody that fits this bill. So there's 8 symptoms of law enforcement distress syndrome that I identify. And I think there's a connection in the degree of severity of these symptoms with how long you've been on the job, because that increases the exposure length, right, of everything you're seeing. How long you've been on the job. I think also, and I have a hypothesis here, that the bigger the city, the more crime and the more violence and things you're seeing, the more prevalent this will be. That potentially if you're working in a smaller town, you might see a lesser degree, or it might take longer for these symptoms to materialize. So what's interesting about these symptoms is that when I wrote my book, From Boy to Blue, because that was the psychological change, which is really what this book was about, is the psychological change of what it's like for us and what happened to me, a kid that grew up in the suburbs, barely being in any fights in his life, to going to a big city police officer on the streets for years. And I unknowingly wrote about these symptoms in my book, and I didn't know it. Now I look back at the book and I go, oh, you can see why this adrenaline addiction became a thing, or you can see why fatalistic thinking became a thing, or, oh my God, you see the hypervigilance, revenge paranoia, you see all these things starting to develop and why they came to be. All right, so the first symptom is hypervigilance. Now, vigilance is a good thing on duty. Vigilance keeps cops alive, but hypervigilance is when this morphs into a quality of life issue, when you're always on guard against a perceived threat, most of the time that's not even real, okay? And you find it virtually impossible to relax. And in severe cases, like places you relax are confined, like maybe even areas of your home, but there are degrees of this. And when this starts to affect you as a police officer's quality of life or a loved one's quality of life, because they're always on guard and it's so draining, immune system, everything suffers because you're just always at attention. We're not built to be like that. We've got to have our relaxation time. Revenge or vengeance paranoia is the other one. And I don't just talk about paranoia like, oh, aliens are invading or something like this. I'm talking about taking actions, even legal, justified, lawful, righteous actions, but afterwards worrying, having anxiety about potential revenge or people trying to, take their vengeance out on you because you've put them in jail, even if your actions were lawful. So how much energy are you wasting or worrying, or how much is revenge or vengeance paranoia? How much of it is a part of your day, if any? And is it occurring off duty? I break down my research into on and off duty because some of these things, if you're taking this home with you, that's affecting quality of life, right? Distrust of others. Distrust of others is certainly a thing that helps law enforcement. You need to have a healthy distrust of others because people are telling you things, and it's probably good for you to corroborate them and not just take people at their word, because lots of people lie to the cops. But is this bleeding forward into your personal life? Are you distrusting friends, loved ones, associates, spouses, partners? I mean, is this starting to be a problem? I've noticed it. I've seen this happen. Antisocial behavior is another characteristic. And there's, the us versus them mentality has been pervasive throughout law enforcement since I came on, since I can even think about. And that's not what I'm talking about here. To the point where I've seen officers to the extreme version of this, not, distance themselves from people, not have any friends, and just like not having any interactions with people. In a moderate form, are cops your only friends? You have trouble making non-law enforcement friends? Are you always hanging out with cops? All right, fatalistic thinking is something that this has taken me a long time to overcome that. Police officers see so many things result in death. Everyday activities, getting in the car to drive to Starbucks, and you get broadsided by a DUI and you result in death. Using a table saw has killed people, right? Just lighting fireworks with your family in the driveway. We've seen people die doing that. And some people just, horrifically maimed, whatever. But after years and years of witnessing this is the hidden cost. I don't think most of America knows that this is something, and this is a battle. I mean, I had a battle with this to try to bring my quality of life back up to, an appropriate level. But things resulting in death starts to happen when you've seen enough of it. And when you or a loved one goes to do these things, you potentially worry about them ending in death. So what happens over time is you just start to think everything results in death. All right. Adrenaline addiction. You go from driving around in the middle of the night, 3 a.m., tired, and this is especially a thing for street cops or undercover people that are experiencing these big adrenaline dumps. And all of a sudden, shots are fired, and you're driving at 100 miles an hour with your lights and sirens on. Okay, so you get accustomed to these adrenaline dumps. And things can happen if you become dependent on them, or if you seek them out, or when you leave the job and your adrenaline dumps stop. That can cause problems. So there's varying degrees of severity, and I talk about what these look like in their mild form, what these look like in their extreme form in my writing at stevewarneke.com. And right now, for former and current police officers, I'm asking you to please participate in my study. It's 15 minutes. It's at stevewarneke.com. Put the website on the screen for you, Warneke. You can read about LEDS, but I really need your input so that we can help police officers, identify this because this is new. So we want to be able to say, oh, I know what this is. I've heard about this. I've read about this before. And now I also talk about managing, coping, prevention, treatment, those things. And so how do I do that? And to catch it early. Now, these symptoms can lead to more severe things like depression, suicidal thoughts or actions, or alcohol or substance abuse. If you don't know what's happening in your brain and you're not able to identify and treat and prevent this, those things can potentially lead to depression, suicidal thoughts, or actions, or alcohol or substance abuse down the road. And that's what we're trying to prevent. So it's very important, current and former law enforcement, please take 15 minutes to participate in my study at stevewarneke.com. That's Warneke. Put it up on the screen. Please take part in the 15-minute survey. The response for this survey has been unbelievable so far. The research is so interesting. I cannot wait to share the findings with you when I make them. So over the next course of weeks, we're spending last week and this week talking about LEDS and what it is and getting people to fill out the survey. But over the next few weeks, I'm going to be dissecting each symptom one by one with some writing, some podcasts, whatever. You're going to look for some stuff about it. And I really, really want your input. I mean, there's a way for you to contact me at my website at stevewarneke.com. And I want to know your experiences with this when we talk about these symptoms. And you can do it anonymously, but man, if you're willing to share your name and I can follow up with you, and I'm not going to share your name with anybody, anything. This is just important research for cops. That way I can follow up with you. I would really appreciate that. That would be great. All right, so thank you so much for your time. I look forward to hearing from you. I look forward to hearing for your input. I can't wait. Next week is hypervigilance.